Hey, what's up guys, you got Crave here with a quick review of this year's Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2022. The TLDR is that it's a good game, and I don't normally post content about games that I find awful. However, it's good with some reservations at this point in time. So let's go over some things from a graphics, gameplay, and story point of view. I don't think any of the recent COD games can be considered ugly. It's very much the opposite. This year's release is very good to look at, and it fully supports the ultra-wide format. So if you're interested in seeing it in ultra-wide, just check the card on the upper right part of your screen or check the description box below. Anyway, I don't have the most powerful machine, but thank goodness for DLSS, I can push IQ settings to high with some things like depth of field and blur turned off. Even with DLSS set to quality, I can hover well above 80 frames if spot cache is set to high, and I can go above 100 if the cache is set to low. So overall, the game feels good when it works. I'm saying when it works because of one of its issues, but we'll get to that in the gameplay section. The multiplayer maps will get repetitive over time, and they don't look as good as the campaign settings. That's where, in the campaign, Infinity Ward really showcases how good the game looks. They take full advantage of certain day and night cycles and can basically shift camera angles, especially in cutscenes. It won't surprise you or wow you as it did when Modern Warfare 2019 or even Vanguard when they both came out. But make no mistake, the game still looks very good. I suppose we've reached a plateau of sorts where games can only, or at least graphics can only get so good until some new technology makes things even better. For the audio part, really nothing much to say, but it's good. Similar to graphics, it's gotten to a point where you expect a certain level of sound quality, but it doesn't wow you as much. For the campaign, all sounds and voice acting are still top notch. It has a somewhat movie quality feel to things. On the characters, I wish Farah had a bigger role to play though. I always thought her character was great in 2019. In multiplayer, I'd like to point out that footsteps are a very obvious thing now, and it's really a player's ability to react on time to avoid being caught unaware. For players like me though, it doesn't really help us much. Either I'm kind of slow to react or my aim is way off. Now, if I were to just nitpick on the audio, I do like the hit sound effects of 2019 as opposed to this year's release.
Pull up! Pull up! Fuck! Сука! Enemy missile! Outstanding, guys! There's a truck ahead! Get us over it! I can try. Hang on! Hostile cruise missile launched. Hey, Wolf! Changing back. Reloading. Reloading.
Just like the graphics and sounds, the story is good, but it doesn't have the same feel of 2019. Think of it like a typical movie plot. I guess the presentation of the graphics and audio help, but it will make you think it's still the same military story all over again. It might be a good or a bad thing, but the 2022 campaign draws some parallels from the previous COD releases. I like that the likes of Price Soap and the others are present, with Laswell being a bit more active in terms of roles to play. There's also a great character in the campaign who goes by the name of Graves, which part of me really thinks that his evolution in the story could have gone differently. He led a pretty awesome PMC group in the story. Farah is back, but sadly, her role to play was a bit limited. She was really just one of the best characters in 2019. Now about the campaign or the plot, really nothing much to say about campaigns from COD. I mean, you get maybe a good 5 hours, I think. Maybe that's about it. And that's typical for a COD release. And while it is short, I still think it's a necessary addition to the package. Here's where Modern Warfare has the really good things and the very bad things. When it's good, and when it's bad, well, you get your desktop. I mean, I don't recall 2019 crashing as much or getting this error. I mean, it gets really frustrating. It crashes when you're having good games. It crashed once while I was doing a series of benchmark tests, or sometimes it's obvious that it crashes for others because I guess I noticed that other players are dropping off even when they're doing well on the boards. It also crashes when I'm having bad games, which happens often, so I guess I'm pretty thankful in that regard. It doesn't happen every game, as often exaggerated by some people, but it has happened often enough for me that I should point it out. It's frustrating because when the game doesn't bring you back to Windows, it's really good. It still has that nice, well-paced, and steady gameplay of 2019. The gunplay is still great. There are other concerns though about Modern Warfare, which makes it difficult to all-out recommend. I experience my keybinds resetting every now and then, which is a pain because you expect certain actions with certain key presses, but it either doesn't respond or it performs a different action. I end up fixing my binds in the middle of a match. I also sometimes zone into empty matches, which results in an auto win, or zone into fight where basically I'm against a full 5 or 6 on the opposite side. So basically, I end up quitting those games when that happens. Last on some errors, the UI is also a bit wonky as some elements can overlap with each other, but that's minor as it happens outside of actual gameplay. I've also noticed some features that could have already been part of this year's release. I don't see the background videos for operators, and I might have missed it, but I don't see the option to customize your reticule. The option to set your pacing just like in Vanguard, basically not present this year. I also don't see token timers, so I'm often wondering if I've run out or I still have some minutes left. Basically, it feels like these should have been a part of the game. One feature that I've always liked is the gunsmith option, but I really find the current iteration to be quite awful. This year's COD follows a horizontal tree system to get the guns you want, and it also affects certain attachments. You basically have to go through certain weapons you might not favor just to get the weapon or optic or whatever attachment you want. For example, there's a particular sight that I want, but it's locked behind the Lockmon series of guns. Now, I have to play a particular weapon that I'm not fond of. It might be fine for other players, but I prefer the older system. It was straightforward, and it had a more sensible path to getting the gun or modification you needed. What's great about the current system, and there's one thing that's great about it, is weapon tuning. But unfortunately, right now, as I do this voiceover, it's disabled. Ideally, you should be able to make adjustments to your weapon's features with a trade-off to consider. I don't fully know at the moment how it feels as devs, again as I mentioned, have this feature disabled. One last thing is SBMM, or the skill-based matchmaking system. It's still a thing in 2022. I don't see it as something that's bad, but the system could be further refined. It's pretty terrible when you get a game or two where you win and you have a good kill-death ratio and then end up with 4 or 5 games where you get completely mowed down. I do understand that you have to go against players of the same skill, but the skill gap when the system matches you is just too steep at times. I'd rather that Infinity Ward make it smoother. It feels like jumping 2 tier levels of skill on succeeding games when you do well in a previous match. Now, I think I'm making it sound like the gameplay is bad. It's not entirely that. The crashes don't happen as often, but it gets frustrating when you experience it. Like I said, when it's good, it's really fun. I was very excited for this year's Modern Warfare, and I was met with great gameplay. Again, when you don't encounter the issues. The graphics, the story, and the sound are all great. Not something as fresh as you want it to be though. The gameplay has some issues, and it's something Infinity Ward has to minimize. If they can speed up the resolution of these concerns, people should enjoy COD as they intended us to. Thanks for watching, guys. Talk to you soon.